Welcome back to Continental Club, everybody watching at home. No Christopher Hamill, he is still sunning it up in Lisbon. So Michael McCubbin, aka the hairiest man at Football Daily, has taken his place. Patrick Van Straten's here as well in the basement.
Second hairiest.
Today, Today we are talking about where do you rank Zinedine Zidane as a manager? This has already caused much debate off camera and in the FD office. Pato, you don't rank him particularly highly.
No, I mean, he's not in the top 10 in the world,
Madness.
is he? Well, he's not.
Madness, Pato.
Why? Like, look, I think he's got an incredible squad at Real Madrid. I think he's made some decent substitutions, like, recently, though it helps when you have an insanely deep squad and you can bring on Asensio and Bale off the bench. Like, that's not a bad position to be in. I think he should probably achieve more with that squad, like, in the league.
Definitely.
And in the Champions League, like, look, they've been very good. This year they've had the hardest run to the final I've possibly ever seen. On the other hand, when people say, look, they always find a way, they didn't really find a way. They got handed away by the fact that Bayern couldn't finish their chances. Last year they got through against Bayern because our linesman doesn't seem to understand his job and just gave them 2 free goals. Like, even this year against Bayern, you know, like, if Ulreich hadn't made that mistake, if Rafinha hadn't made that mistake, Real Madrid wouldn't have scored those goals. And look, like, I know that people will say, oh, well, you know, like, good teams kind of make their own, like, they put players in positions to fail by pressing them and stuff. Real Madrid don't really do that. They're not really good at pressing. Their defensive strategy seems to always be Sergio Ramos will sort it out. And I don't know, they just rely on exceptional technical quality in midfield and exceptional kind of efficiency up front. This isn't all bad, like, it's fine. Like, putting your team in a position to succeed is fine. But, like, if you gave every manager in the world, like, just a team of, like, 11 faceless players who were all, like, the same kind of rating, then Zidane's team would not be one of the 10 best. We can easily name 10 managers better than Zidane right now. I don't even think they'd be that controversial.
I think tactically you're potentially right, but I don't think you can classify it as 11 faceless players, because I think a key aspect to managing teams is man managing and motivating players. You can be a better man manager and motivator than a tactician and still be a very successful manager. And that is what Zinedine Zidane is proving. You don't necessarily have to be the best tactician.
You have to have a bit of both. Like, if you're just a...
And I'm sure he does. That's why he's won 3 Champions League.
If you're just a man manager, you better have the best squad in the world. Unfortunately for him, he does. Yeah, and he's also had some amazing luck as well.
But there's been some fantastic managers managing that Real Madrid squad in the past that have had nowhere near as much success as Zinedine.
No, it's true. I think Zidane's a very, very good fit at Real Madrid, at least in terms of his success in tournaments, like in terms of the club's kind of the way the club views itself in the world, like the fact that he's won 2 Champions Leagues and could add a 3rd this year, like in a row, is like that. That's an outstanding achievement, obviously. But I think if you put him somewhere else, I just don't think it would work in the same way as, say, someone like Pochettino, who I think could adapt to another big club or make a step up to a bigger club and do some really amazing things.
And that's just based on what? That he's lucked through against Bayern Munich?
I'm just comparing them. I'm just saying that I don't think that Zidane has shown as Real Madrid manager that he could take his expertise to another club and improve them. Like, if you look at, like, how bad they've been in La Liga this season, like, given their squad, given the fact that they do actually have on paper a very strong defence, and they've somehow let
deep defence.
Sorry?
Not particularly deep defence.
No, but a defence that should be able to keep out Real Betis at home. You know, like I don't know. There's definitely
under 4 games a season usually.
Yeah, there's definitely, like, quite significant deficiencies there, like which can't just be pinned down to, you know.
But I think that comes partly as, let's face it, he's been a manager for 3 years. I think you learn your craft. Pochettino's been a manager for a lot longer than Zidane.
Yeah, but then that's fine. Like, maybe one day he will be one of the 10 best managers in the world. But what I'm saying is, at the moment, which is what the question is, he isn't.
But this is what I'm saying, is that you add that time learning expertise with management and his immediate success, so he's going to be an absolutely ridiculous level manager after a few years for me.
I'm not sure that that's really true.
I think that's what he's hoping, but I think there is definitely potential for him to take a dip, because, like, the kind of success that he's had, at least on paper and in terms of, like, how people view it, is like there's almost nothing more he can do.
I actually kind of think he's going to do a bit of a Guardiola. I actually agree with you, there are managers better than him in the world, Pep Guardiola being one of them, that I would rather manage my club. I think he's a fantastic tactician. Obviously, he gets the best out of all his players in a different way to Zinedine Zidane. I think there's two different ways you can go about managing, and Zidane is doing it just as efficiently as Pep Guardiola. Pep Guardiola on the pitch has created and crafted a fantastic way of playing football. Off the pitch, Zidane has obviously created and crafted a fantastic way of running a team in Real Madrid, and I think there's a lot to be said for that way of management.
But Guardiola's way is much more likely to lead to long-term success. Like the problem with Zidane's one is that, like, okay, he's got amazing players now, and yes, he is capable of motivating them. I don't deny that. I have no wish to deny that. But when he loses Cristiano Ronaldo, when he loses Luka Modric, and the guys who come in are a little bit younger and they need to be turned into stars as opposed to just motivated, then is he capable of doing that? And I'm not really sure that he is. Certainly at the moment, he has improved a lot of players.
Casemiro has clearly got better under Zidane's reign.
Asensio
has improved under Zidane's reign.
I think that Casemiro also improved under Benitez, and I think Asensio has improved under Zidane purely because of the time Zidane came along. Like, if you take charge of a player when they're 20 and then you leave when they're 23, then they are going to have got better during that period, purely because that is the age where players get better.
Not always, though.
Not always. When they are good players, will get better during that period, almost regardless of who is managing them. They will get a lot better if they're managed by a good coach. But generally speaking, players who are good, have good underlying numbers, will just improve between 20 and 23, because 23 tends to be when we see them make the leap.
I also think, though, that Zidane is in a very favourable position now, in that he'll only get offered extremely elite jobs. He's not going to take a job at a second fiddle club now from Real Madrid. I see his next club as being someone like Juventus. I know you don't think he could take over there, and then he'll win another league title in Juventus.
Maybe.
People will level the same accusation they levelled at Pep Guardiola. Well, he only ever managed a big club, so how can he? That accusation is a nonsense.
No, but I think that would be the marker, wouldn't it? If Zidane went to Italy and won Serie A with Juventus if Serie A was as competitive this year stays as competitive as it's been this year, and Zidane went over there and won it with Juventus, then you'd kind of be like, fair play. But I don't know. He's been at Real Madrid manager for 2.5 years.
Yeah, 2.5 years.
Won the league last year. Pretty impressive campaign. Having said that, Barcelona really were very far from their best. And Luis Enrique was kind of losing it a bit. And then this year, I don't know. I think managing. I feel like managing a team over a league campaign is a far better marker of what makes a top class manager, rather than
to a certain extent. I mean, the thing is though, if Zidane took over Juventus, right, and then they did say Zidane took over Juventus this summer and they didn't win the Champions League next year, they went out of the quarters,
but won the
or
league.
The semis. Sure, they went out of the quarters or the semis. Then would you say what would be your explanation? Would you be like, well, he's been let down by his players?
It would,
because if a manager can be let down by their players, then they can also be carried by their players.
But it would depend on how well he's done domestically.
What, as in had he won the league with 100 points, or did he scrape it? About? Yeah, sure, of course it would. But I just think that with Zidane,
in the same way that I still think Pep Guardiola is a fantastic coach, even though he didn't win the Champions League at Bayern Munich.
Yeah, I mean Zidane, but Guardiola has also achieved. Guardiola took a team that had just won the treble and actually made them way more dominant in the league. And you look at his Man City team now, and the numbers they're putting up domestically rival the numbers that he got out of Barcelona at their best. Yeah, which is crazy, really. Yeah. Whereas and they're doing it without Messi.
That's what I'm saying. If Zidane went and crushed Serie A, I think.
Yeah, sure. If he crushed it, but I just don't think he would, because I don't think he's got the tactical skill, and maybe he will develop it. But at the moment, I just don't see him being one of the best managers in the world. When you say before, are we disqualifying him as a good manager purely on the basis of a bit of luck in the Champions League? When your only argument that he's good is that he's won 2 Champions Leagues, then devaluing the quality of those wins is kind of a fatal blow to him as a coach.
Yeah.
When his team, obviously he's got to motivate his team, but when they aren't playing well, when everyone's not working together, I don't think he has a tactical system which continues to get the best out of them.
I also think he's in a really weird position in that when his team does play well and when they do play teams off the park, for instance, when they went to Paris and absolutely tore that decent PSG team apart, he got no credit for being for the tactics that were implemented on the night.
I mean, I think we'd all agree though that PSG were extremely poor. But again, I don't deny that. He's made some really good substitutions in the Champions League. That is definitely a skill.
He doesn't get as much credit for that.
I think he did get plenty of credit for that. He's made some great substitutions recently. But at the same time, you've got to say, when they're missing their best player, when PSG, I thought, set up really poorly, and when you can bring on players like Asensio, then I think that you are in a position where it's easier to succeed than fail.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a tight one. I mean, where would you like to see him go next if he was to leave Real Madrid then? What would be an ideal club for you guys? So I think Juventus would be the perfect fit for Zidane
I would
next.
probably agree that somewhere like Juve would be
Another
as
club
good a
he's
fit,
managed
as good a
before.
fit,
Played for before,
or maybe PSG. Like I think, yeah, he's
Really?
he's obviously good at managing squads. But yeah, I don't know. Personally, I think he would be stupid to leave Real Madrid
I'd
by
much
choice.
rather he went to a Premier League club. I think you get much more of a handle on how good he is in the Premier League because of the quality of manager at the top. Like if you're going up against like Guardiola, Pochettino, Klopp, those are such different challenges from week to week, and then I do think you get a really good sense of how good a coach is. You know, so this season, for instance, you see just how far Wenger's fallen because the quality of manager in the league is now such that he looks way off the pace.
But could you see like I could only, out of the top clubs in England, I could only realistically see maybe Chelsea going for him.
Oh,
I could see United going for him.
Do you see United going for him?
100%.
Not
Really?
really, but he's their kind
Sort
of, he's like a Galactico.
Yeah, 100%. That sort of big name.
But United could do better.
Massive,
United could do better.
Massive commercial moves.
We need a top 5 manager.
That would be the equivalent of you buying Alexis Sanchez in January instead of waiting for the summer and getting Griezmann or Dybala. That's what that would be. You'd be getting a guy. You'd be getting a guy who you're like, I mean, like he seems pretty good because of like a couple of things here, but he's not actually the guy who will set you up for success long term.
It's very true. But what do you guys at home think? Where would you rank Zinedine Zidane? Would you put him right up there with the top managers in the world? Or do you agree with these guys that maybe he's got a bit lucky in the Champions League and is not quite there yet and needs to prove himself more? Let us know your thoughts on Zidane in the comments below. Our next topic was mentioned by Dev on Twitter. If you want to be involved in Continental Club next week, hit us up. Patrick usually sends a tweet on a Thursday or a Wednesday asking for questions and topics, so send him your tweets. The first one comes from Dev and he says, a maximum of 4 players your club needs to sign. Who are they? Let me know. Ooh. Manchester United might come in?
We've got 2 United fans here.
Let's start with United.
Makes sense,
Let's do a little
wouldn't it?
dive
Yeah.
on United.
Come on.
So I mean, it's very clear the areas we need to improve in are probably defensively based. Fullbacks, so right back and left back.
Okay.
Maybe another central defender because I cannot see one of Rojo, Jones and Smalling not leaving in the summer. And then probably central midfield. Although we've got quite a few players in central midfield, but not. Yeah, we definitely need another kind of 30-40 million signing in that area.
I think actually we need a 60-70 million signing in that area.
You think?
I
Who
think-
qualifies for
I
that
think
for that
we've
price
got
tag?
I think we've got the 30-40 million pound players in Ander Herrera and Fellaini, but they're not.
It's crazy
quite,
that Fellaini's considered a 30-40
but
million
he is
pound
a
player.
30 million pound player. We
To an
signed him
extent.
for 30 million pounds.
True.
And I personally think that player that comes in needs to be one of the first names on the team sheet, central midfield. Him, Pogba and Matic in the midfield 3, Ander Herrera onto the bench, Fellaini onto the bench. I don't know about both fullbacks for me. I don't know whether I necessarily agree we need a right back.
I think we do. Unless we need, we definitely need a right back. I don't think just for the long term. I think Valencia could have another okay season at right back, but no more than that. Like we need someone to come in. We kind of need someone to come in and be a replacement for him straight away, or at least someone who's going to like properly challenge for that right back berth. Like I just don't see Valencia holding up for. He's 32 this year.
Yeah,
I just can't see him holding that up. He is a bit of a natural phenomenon, that the fact that he's still so quick at this age, but like I just can't see him keeping it up. And also I just think we can do better. He's been good, but he's definitely not been as good this season.
I think we'll definitely go in big for Toby Alderweireld. Toby Alderweireld is going to be one of Jose's primary targets. I think, like an established Premier League name in that age range that Jose really likes to sign, sort of 27 to 30 years old. Knows he's going to come in and make an immediate impact. I think at left back, I think we're going to have a big play for Alexandra as part of the Matteo Darmian.
Do you think that will happen? Yeah.
Yeah, I think
it would make sense.
If we're going to let Matteo Darmian go to Juventus, which seems extremely likely, the club's been in talks for ages, I don't see any world in which Ed Woodward is not going. All right, if you want to chat about Matteo Darmian, I want to chat about Alexandra, because I think Sandro came close to joining Chelsea last summer. Very publicly, that's known, isn't it? So I think he'll probably go this year, whether it's United or another Premier League club. Sandro will definitely be on the move.
I think that would be a great that would be a great kind of conclusion to Darmian going to Juve.
Mate,
That
Darmian's
would be
been a good
pretty great.
servant. Good in the one-on-one.
Yeah, I like Darmian. I think he's probably our best defensive fullback. But
who do you think we need, Pato?
Who would you target in central midfield? Like, that's the question for me, because look, fullbacks I think are okay. You know, so for instance, like say Southampton go down, I think like Bertrand and Cedric would be perfectly good pickups for you. Maybe not at left back because you need a starter there. My worry here is that you're doing kind of the opposite of Arsenal. Like Arsenal have got a really old squad and we're trying to make it younger, and all these people who've been talked about for Man United are just kind of going to make the squad older.
Yeah, I think Jose will start to go for. I think
Mourinho always does this. He makes the squad older.
There is a couple of options in central midfield that have been talked about a lot in the press over about the last 2 weeks. Fred being the first one, we're going to challenge Manchester City, and I think we actually went in for him alongside City. So, basically, when
it depends whether
goes for a title.
it depends whether Jorginho goes to City as well, doesn't it? Because City aren't going to buy two big midfield signings.
They're very different though. Like I mean,
just in terms of who's
qualities are you looking for in a central midfielder?
I personally think
what do you need
you're
out
looking for an improved Ander Herrera, somebody that buzzes around the pitch, picks up a lot of tackles and interceptions, is extremely athletic. Because let's face it, Paul Pogba is not going to do the defensive work.
So you want kind of like a. So are you going to push Matic forward? Are you going to get a 6?
No, the ideal player that is unsignable is N'Golo Kante for me.
Oh yeah, sure.
In midfield, that would be if you could replicate N'Golo Kante and take him out of a club, that would be the perfect player. Sits alongside Matic and frees Pogba up completely.
Okay, so like so maybe if you're looking at bargain signings, there's Amadou Haidara who's impressed with Red Bull Salzburg.
I don't think we're ever going to go for a bargain.
There's Mario Lemina. These are good. If you want to spend money elsewhere, Mario Lemina, he'd be good as well. Lucas Torreira, obviously. Yeah. So you want a guy basically who's going to put in a ton of defensive work, doesn't really need to get involved on the creative end.
Yeah,
I could probably beat a man.
But I think it's more likely.
So what about Alan from Napoli?
I don't think United are going to go for players like that. I think
but the type you're talking about, I don't think there is one of those players. Who's like high profile.
I completely agree. The players we should be going for are the Alans, but the players that Mourinho is going to go for are the Vidals. That's where I think Jose is going to veer towards.
Vidal makes sense in that role. Like, if it weren't for his age, he'd be perfect.
Exactly, and he's played with Paul Pogba in a midfield three before. He's experienced at the European top level, which I think Jose is going to push quite hard for next season. So I think that's the more likely option for Jose Mourinho.
What about an Aaron Ramsey for you?
No, I mean, I would take him at United. I would absolutely take him at Manchester United, but I don't think Jose will go for him because I think Ramsey wants to play quite a similar area to Paul Pogba. He wants to
play as basically a 10.
Yeah.
But to be honest, he does profile kind of like what you expect from a Mourinho 10. Like Mourinho's 10s are never really proper 10s. They're basically guys who are midfielders out of possession and an extra attacker in possession.
Yeah, that's Jesse
like
Lingard.
Oscar.
That's why he plays Jesse Lingard.
Yeah, that's true. Jesse Lingard is going to be a useful player for you, but you are looking now at Herrera, Matic after one season, Mata, like all Alexis Sanchez, like these guys are not ones for the future.
No, and I think we'll probably let quite a few players go. I think you're right. I think one of Jones and Smalling will leave the club this year, probably to Everton. Luke Shaw's going to leave the club this summer. I'd be surprised if we can keep hold of Anthony Martial, as heartbreaking as that is, because he's obviously an extremely talented player. Daley Blint's definitely going to leave the club. Matteo Darmian's definitely going to leave the club. We're going to wipe a lot of wages, and I think we're going to sign some absolute beasts, to be honest. And I actually don't think we'll necessarily get us to where we need to be in terms of battling City, but he's going to try his very best by getting the checkbook out, I think, Jose. What about, what about Marco Verratti?
Well, he's not that sort of player though. Like he's gonna sit a lot deeper. I feel like he and Matic are kind of gonna want to play the same. Matic, don't get me wrong, Matic has the technical ability to get forward more than people think. But like that's not a very fast midfield that you've got there.
He offers a lot of screening, Matic, for our backline, and our backline need a lot of fucking screening.
So then, what does Verratti do? Like that's exactly what Verratti wants to do, really.
But equally, I think the one good thing Verratti would add is by sitting deeper, our centre backs can't pass the fucking ball. So when he picks the ball up deeper, he can distribute a lot better. I think one of our biggest problems is that our centre-backs, because they can't pass the ball, the only line of pass is to Nemanja Matic. And decent teams, top-level teams, just cut the Matic line off, and then you've got nothing, and the ball just goes in a U like this across United's backline all day. So then Paul Pogba has to drop deep, and then you lose that attacking option. That's a big problem.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Matic hasn't been necessarily like the most kind of creative this
No,
season.
but
at least not after the start of the season.
That's also a reason I think
Yeah.
he'll go for Toby Alderweireld quite hard, in that Toby's passing range from deep is extremely strong for a central defender.
Again, very old though. Like, I mean, it's one of those things
sure.
where you're like, we have to. If you go and get Alderweireld and you've got Sanchez as well, then you're basically saying we have to win now. Because if we don't, the guy who comes in after Mourinho is going to look around and have a bunch of pensioners on his hands.
But this is
the
this
guy
is
who
going to
you
be
want
the,
really is Saul, I think, from Atleti. Like, he would be ideal for you. He fits that bill, doesn't he? Of like a superstar signing who can do everything in midfield and is amazing. Well, yeah. Plus, he's got a contract for life basically now at Atletico. But when you talk about this sort of player, that's the guy who I think is like the dream.
Because I think Jose over about the last month has finally tweaked, I need to play a midfield 3 to 3 at Pogba. Yeah, I think he said 2 or 3 times now that Pogba's had his 4 best games in a Man United shirt over the last month or so in that midfield 3, playing further forward. He's contributed to 5 odd goals in the last 4 games, hasn't he, Paul, as well? So I think he's definitely going to play there next season. But who that third man in midfield is, I don't know. But who do you think United should sign this summer? And who does your club need to bring in? 4 players, 4 names in the comments below, and send it to us on Twitter as well. Get involved in the conversation with the hashtag Continental Club. Our final question of the day was sent in by the real Michael Jordan, and he says, why is there such a dearth of top centre-backs compared to previous generations? Now, Pato, you got a bit of a hot take on this one, haven't you?
I just think it's bullshit. I just don't think it's true. Like, overall, since the 50s, the number of goals per game has been dropping in football overall. And people always have this attitude, you know, like you hear it from old presenters, you know, who played 30, 40 years ago, when they just say like, oh, well, defending's declined, like the art of defending has been lost. Well, that's bullshit. Firstly, teams attack in much more interesting ways than they used to in the past. Like, there was a lot of wing play, a lot of crosses into the box, and defenders didn't need to be as mobile. They just needed to be big and strong and good in the air. Now you need defenders who are good in the build-up, who can bring the ball out of defence, and also who can cover much larger spaces in behind. And as a result, that means that defenders are put in a position where they look stupid more often, and also that it's much harder to find them. Because you've basically got to find somebody who's a really good passer, who's really big and strong, who's mobile, but isn't good enough at any of those things that they play central midfield.
Yeah.
You know, you need to find somebody who's like Pogba, but worse in every single aspect, so that he's become a centre-back instead of a star central midfielder.
Funny way of looking at it.
It's now really, really difficult to recruit. Whereas in the past, you were like, big, strong, slow, can jump and clear the ball, he's going to be a centre-back.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think one of the biggest changes that's happened in probably the last 10 to 15 years is the pressing level has gone up 100%. You now see teams pressing central defenders and fullbacks more than any other area on the pitch, effectively. So you have to have a centre-back who can break lines just with 1 or 2 passes. That is so much harder to do than back in the day when Sol Campbell just used to the ball down the line. Like, excuse my language, but if you put Sol Campbell at the centre of Manchester City's defence and asked him to break the lines of a Barcelona press, he would not be able to do it effectively.
No.
It's a totally different style of central defender. Back then it was all tackles, like mud, get your head on the ball. Now it's tactical discipline, covering space, and the ability to start the attack.
Like,
I think that's the key.
How many centre-backs are there now who are slow but are still seen as being really good?
Yeah.
Like, there are almost none of them. Whereas back in the day, like, loads of centre-backs were slow, but you either couldn't tell because teams played so conservatively that you never really saw them having to sprint after someone, or they were just renowned for other things, and back then, like, it wasn't seen as an important part of the game. These days, you see guys like Raul Albiol and Per Mertesacker. Like, I'm not saying these are the greatest defenders in the world, but they are good examples of a particular type, which is the conservative partner, while the guy they play with kind of is the front foot guy. And those guys get shit constantly. They're just seen as like kind of waste of space. They're like, oh, we should replace them with someone who's fast, you know, who can like run out of the lines, you know, who'll make loads of tackles and interceptions. And I think those guys back in like the late 90s would have been seen as really, really good defenders because they're just smart. They don't make bad decisions.
Well, there's a reason why they came through at that certain time, about 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
But I also think I think it's also like a kind of a memory thing as well. I think every season, you know, if you watch Match of the Day, you'd think that you know, defending has, you know, completely gone to and there's no saving it because every single week the defensive mistakes are like picked up on every single time. Whereas people forget that like games throughout history have been completely defined by defensive mistakes. Like 10, 15 years ago, you had teams like Mourinho's original Chelsea, the United, the United side, which were Vidic, Ferdinand, and Van der Sar. Two of like all-time great Premier League defences and defences that did kind of build titles. So it's kind of fair to see how people would say look back to that and be like, oh, there isn't a defence as well structured as those now. But at the same time, like if you watched Premier League back then, it would still be littered with the same amount of defensive mistakes from other clubs. Like
somebody had to score somehow.
Yeah, of course. And so I think there's a kind of misconception of like
greatest defences of all time, then it is always going to fall down.
And when you go and find like you can find highlight reels of pretty much any great defender you can think of getting schooled. Like you can see Maldini getting clowned, and Maldini I think is like the best defender I've ever seen. Like you can see clips of like Brazilian Ronaldo like giving Nesta like vertigo just because he's like turned him so many times. That stuff exists, but it's just not the stuff we're used to seeing. You're used to seeing, like Marcel Desailly crunch into a tackle, bring the ball upfield. Yeah, literally. Like look incredible.
I think it's also you hear a lot of old pundits and old-fashioned central defenders, Martin Keown springing to mind immediately, going, a classic example would be Manchester City. They've just still got that soft defence. They're still not quite defensively solid. Like this is a defence that is like. It's conceding little to no shots on goal per game. They've been unbelievable at the back this year because of a different tactical style that was employed 10 to 15 years ago. Yeah. Now they're defending by keeping hold of the ball and possession. Back then they were defending by flinging their faces in front of the ball. Yeah. That is one art of defending. Yeah. This is another art of defending, and both of them are just as effective.
Yeah, and it's interesting how, say, like after the United game, obviously came back 3-2, and there were some defensive mistakes in there, but how those things were picked up as like the kind of defining things on the City side. It was like, oh yeah, maybe they've still got to work on some things. Where they're kind of forgetting that for the rest of the season they've been like exemplary in that.
Unbelievable.
For how well they've been.
There's no defensive system which can legislate for an amazing attacker just sitting your defender on his arse. Yeah. No matter how good your system is, if a really, really good player gets one-on-one with your centre-back and goes past him, your defensive structure will just fall apart. Like, there's nothing you can do about that. And that's been true for the entirety of football's history.
100%. It's like genuinely one of the best defences I've seen in my lifetime is still Juventus's of the last couple of years under Chiellini, Barzagli, Bonucci, and still in Champions League final, Cristiano Ronaldo had his way with them. Yeah. There are times and occasions where you just can't legislate for attacking brilliance as a defence. They're still a phenomenal defensive unit. So to say the art of defending has gone. Sergio Ramos, still an incredible defender, and Rafa Varane coming through the ranks in France. Unbelievable set of centre-backs. So I think I agree with Pato. I think it's kind of a bull statement that's swept through because people don't really understand football.
Yeah, so I think we all disagreed on the first question. Now we've all agreed on this one.
So that's a nice little line, isn't it? Cheers. So that's the end of Continental Club this week, but there's still loads happening on the Football Daily Network. What else is happening, Mikey?
VFN over on FD. Is it you and Dave, I believe?
Me and Dave Jackson's also a special appearance from John Ben Babb. So exciting. Incredible scenes.
I'm really excited to see that actually. And Pat, what
stay right here on Eurofootball Daily and check out Stat Was the Champions with me and Statman Dave. It's a rematch, a grudge match from last year's tournament. So check that out. See how we did. Did all right. Bye.